Welcome Database Administrator to Legend Diamond Jewelry Store. Please take a minute to watch our jewelry store's welcome video. Our diamond store sells different rings and bracelets to soothe the needs of our customers for special events like engagements, marriage anniversaries, etc. We would like to hire you to create a database uniquely for our store. This database should contain all the details we have included for you in the upcoming slides. The main reason we would like a well-organized database for our jewelry store is because we would like to know how many of our customers buy specific cuts of the diamonds we sell, like princess cuts, round brilliant cuts. We would also like to know what type of the diamond jewelry do our customers buy the most. In addition to that, we would like to find out which occasions do our customers mostly purchase their selected jewelry for. All this information will be passed on to our diamond designers and creators so that they would be able to make more of our customers' favorite recommendations. We trust you will do a good job, as we have heard you are the best at this. Please read the instructions carefully on the post slides. Remember to ask us if you are in doubt of any instructions given. Also remember to include the necessary validation checks for each field in the database tables as given in the slides following this one. You will also need to create necessary query searches to display results for what we require from our customers. We are confident that the database you will create for our shop would significantly solve all the problems we have had till this point. Good luck. You may now begin your database challenge.
Recording this video to explain how to create the database for the Legend Diamond Jewelry Store, because I found that some of you guys didn't quite understand it from the class, so I'm just going to re-explain it with this video tutorial, and hopefully it will be helpful for you to understand what to do. So the first thing you need to do is, when you open up your program, ideally your program would start with a welcome. So how my program works is it starts with a welcome message. And like I mentioned in the class, I have assigned 2 unique identification IDs for both rings that the store is launching, which is the Rainbow Glow and the Fiery Sparkle. Then I started my program by, obviously I just basically ran this program for a certain amount of customers. So this is why I use a for loop. I assume that because this is a diamond store, so obviously they have limited amount of diamond rings that they're launching. So that means limited amount of people that can buy it. So I just limited this amount. Of course, you don't have to do this. And it starts off by a function, and then it starts to ask the user if they are a customer or admin or basically want to exit or restart. If the user is a customer, so it asks them to choose which ring ID they would like. Obviously, they have seen the ring ID. So this one is for Rainbow Glow and this one is for Fiery Sparkle. And this is very useful for the database. And so if they choose any of these ring IDs, then they get to print out these messages. Well, obviously, this message will print out telling them that this is what you've selected, details about the ring, which I have stored in this ring info list. So the ring ID, the name of the ring, the type of cut, and the carat. So that's pretty much what this part is going to do. It's just going to go to that list, and it's just basically going to find the index position of the particular customer choice, which in this case is the ring ID. And from there, it will do a +1 to return the name, and then another +1 to return the cut, and +1 to return the carat. And so this is what I have here. Now, once all of that is done, it prints all the details back to the customer, showing them that this is the ring that they have decided to purchase. And then it asks them if they would like to confirm their order or if they would like to make a different choice. Now, as I mentioned in class, you must have an option where they can actually make a different choice or where they can change what they have decided to do, because that will just allow them to make your program, not allow them, but make it more versatile where they can actually change your choice, so it's not fixated only on just confirming. However, if they decide to confirm their order, then this choice variable, random choice, is just going to randomly generate an order ID, which, if you guys remember, we use this with the baguette where we can randomly generate and the compiler randomly selects something from, in this case my list is a select ID list, so the compiler or the program for me is just going to randomly select from this list any number from here, which I have saved as a string. But I have also added that to this RGDR text, which is rainbow glow diamond ring text. So I have added that along with the choice variable, which basically means is where the compiler is going to go and make a selection from one of these numbers. So it can be something like RGDR1, for example. So that's pretty much what's happening in this section here once they decide to confirm. And that will print telling them, thank you for your confirmation. And we'll ask them how many of the ring they would like to buy. And now if the customer choice is equal to the first ring, so this is where ring info, remember that it is the list where I have stored the details of the ring. So both rings for rainbow, glow, and fiery sparkle. So if this ring info is equal to 0, which means we're talking about the first ring. And if it's equal to 4, we're talking about the second ring, because this starts at a 0, then goes to 1, then goes to 2, then goes to 3, and this is the fourth one, which is the second ring. So if it is equal to a 0, that means that this is where we now start to, I have created a variable called C. So this should be a reasonable variable name, obviously. And that's equal to the choice. I've set it equal to the choice, which is the variable that randomly generates one of these numbers from here. But ideally, we're going to make changes of this in the class, because this should actually be the string, which is the RGDR, rainbow glow diamond ring. And then I will add this plus sign, which basically means concatenate to join. So that is like, it will eventually look like something like this. It will be RGDR, and maybe the computer will choose 1 or 2. So that's pretty much what I'm thinking this, like what this would happen. So that's the order ID that will be uniquely for each customer. We also don't need, as I mentioned in class, so this is definitely needed because we need an order ID to send to the customer orders database table, which I'm going to show you guys how to make. But we don't need to have the ring name and the ring cut and the ring carat, because we already stored that we're going to create a products table where we're going to store all this information for both of the rings. We just need to have the order ID and the quantity, and we also have to have the ring ID. And so the ring ID means any one of these two values. And how we're going to get the ring ID is, if you remember that the customer had to make a choice. So we're going to just use customer choice to basically send that information along with this information for order ID and quantity to the database. So we don't necessarily need this part. So we're going to remove this part in class next time, but you can do that right now, but because we don't need it. But we can keep it for now, actually, because we still have to display the information once their order is confirmed back to the user. But of course, we have to send this information to the database. So this is why I told you guys in class today that you should come to the very end of your code, because all of this information just tells them that your order is confirmed since they have chosen they would like to confirm order. And so that was option A. And so it basically randomly generated this order ID, and it asked them for the quantity, and to verify that it is the first ring, it saved up the new order ID and the ring info in terms of the ring name, the ring cut, and the quantity. And it basically says your order is complete and returns to them that information. And then here it basically tells them your order will be processed. And then this variable that you guys see is basically, I created a list called ring type rainbow. So what this does is it's just storing all of the quantities that have been bought for the rainbow glow. So in the end of the day, I can add up those quantities of rings that have been bought to find the total quantity of rings that have been sold for the rainbow glow and the ones that have been sold for the fiery sparkle. So this is why I created two different lists. One is rainbow glow and one type is fiery. So that's what these lists do. Now, when you come down here, this is the part where we're going to introduce the database code. So this is why I asked you to include this in your code and before you left class today, because we are going to introduce a database code that's going to send this information of order ID, quantity, and then the ring ID to the database so that it can store in the customer orders table. Okay, now going to the database, you have to open up your SQLite software. So I already have this in my computer. you go and create a new database. Make sure you create it in the same place where you have your code. So my code is currently stored in the downloads folder. As you guys can see, this is the code that I call Legend Diamond Jewelry Store. So I'm just going to go and create my database in the downloads. I'm going to call this database orders like we did in class. And the best extension to put for database is what we call SQLite. We can use DB database or SQLite 3, which is the version, but just put SQLite for now. Once you click save, it creates a new database and it tells you to create a new table. So the table we're going to create is the customer orders table. And in this table, like I said in class, we're going to have the order ID first, and that's going to be our integer. Well, for me, it's a text because remember that my order ID is this prefix text for this ring, Rainbow Glow, which is the same thing going to happen for my Fiery Sparkle. So Fiery Sparkle is just going to have a different type of order, which is this FS Fiery Sparkle DRR. So a different type of prefix string or prefix text plus this choice variable, which is randomly going to choose from any one of these numbers here. You can add more choice to yours. So that's what's going to be stored in here. And so this is why I put it as a text. Not null means that it will not allow for empty values to be submitted. So that means there should be an order ID. It will not permit empty submission. So this is a validation of not null. PK means it's a primary key. So that means that it's the what uniquely identifies each order of the customer. And then the unique is also a good thing to include, which just makes it unique so there is no duplication of the same order code. Now, coming down here, we don't need to set anything to foreign key because this is not going to connect to our second table. So we're just going to keep it as a primary key with these the validation of not null and making it unique. Add another field. And so this field is going to be the quantity field. So this is what's going to store the quantity of the ring. So the quantity obviously should be an integer, which is a whole number, and this would have a validation of not null. And then we add the last one, which is going to be the foreign key I was talking in class today about. And so this is the key that's going to connect us to the products table because this is just the ring ID of the ring the customer is buying for a particular order. But it will connect us to the products table, which gives us more detail about the specific ring in terms of the name, the carats, and even the cut, the type of cut. So the ring ID for me is a text, and then it also has a not null. But when you come here, you have to make sure you make it a foreign key. So right now, I cannot select it as a foreign key since I do not have the second table that will connect to it. So even if I select foreign key, I don't have another table. So I'll just leave it as it is for now with these three functions. Well, these three checks that I've done. So this order ID is the primary key, quantity is not null. So this means that they wouldn't be empty submissions. There would have to be something to submit values. Now, once you finish till this stage without doing anything, just click on OK. And now go and create your second table by clicking create table again. And this table is going to be called the products table. So this is what I was talking in class. So this table has a primary key of ring ID. So this is what's connecting to the customer orders table. And this is going to be a text, and this is having not null validation. And this is the primary key. And you can also make this unique, just like what we did with the other one. We don't make this the foreign key because this is not connecting to any table. You have to make the foreign key on the field that is connecting to a table, which means in the customer orders table, the ring ID there is the one you make a foreign key, not the primary key here, because this primary key means that it is the one that uniquely differentiates between the different rings. So now we add the ring name. So you realize I'm not giving space. It's better to avoid spacing in database. And this is also text, not null. We also add the ring cut. And then we add this as a text also, and this is not null. Make sure it is the same thing you have in your program as how you're saving it. So I have the ring name, then I have the ring cuts, you realize, and I have the ring carats. So we also add the ring carats, or you can just call carats. And this is also going to be a text, or you can put it as number depending on what you have, and not null as well. So once you finish with all of that, you do not set anything as the foreign key. This is just the primary key. And then the other one is the one you set as the foreign key, which is the ring ID from the other table. This one you just put as OK. And once you put this as OK, Okay, so as I was saying, this customer. So you create the two tables. Remember that the products table, like I said, I'm just going to show you. Remember that it is the ring ID is the primary key, and it's unique, and it does not connect to any foreign key yet. We have the ring name, which is a text, not null, ring cuts, and ring caret or caret, however you want to write it. And so it looks like that. Once you click OK, and you go back to the customer orders table again, so that you can set the ring ID here as the foreign key, so it can connect to the ring ID in the products table, which was the primary key. So you see now it shows. So make sure you are on the ring ID here, and that's going to be the foreign key. So select the table you want to connect it to, which is products. And then, of course, you're selecting the field, which is the ring ID field. And that's all. Make sure you click outside so that it reflects in the query, as you can see, showing you that the foreign key has been established. And once you are done, you just pretty much click OK, and that's it. So now you have your tables, and you have your customer orders table, and you have your products table. Now in the products table, select the products table because customer orders will only fill up from your program. So the code that we're going to be putting in here, this part here, as I mentioned, is the code that will help us insert all of this information that we need, which is the order ID, the quantity, and the ring ID. We'll insert that information into the database in the customer orders table. But for now, if you go to the products table, the two things you need to do is, well, click on new record. And the one you need to add is, for me, is my two rings, and for you as well. So if ring ID is your primary key, you add it as what is uniquely differentiating the rings. So this one is for my rainbow glow. So this is the two parts information we added in class. And the cut is going to be princess cut, as I mentioned. So cut means a type of diamond cut. And the carat for me is 1.5 carats. You can just put 1.5, or you can put it as 1.5 carat, however you like. I don't think it's necessary to include the carat since the title does say carat, so just 1.5. And then you come and add another record, which is the last record, and this one is for the fiery sparkle. So this is fiery sparkle, and I think I spelled this right, not so sure. I think it's fiery sparkle. So anyways, if it's not right, just correct the spelling. And then this one has a round brilliant cut. The reason I know all of this information is if I go to my table, that's a type of cut that I assume the store is selling, and the carat. And the same thing goes for this fiery sparkle and also the carat. So this is the reason why I have it written as it is. So the round brilliant cut, sorry, and then the carat is 0.8 for me. And once you're done, this is pretty much what you need for a table. Is do a control S, which means control save. Always do a control S once you enter information in your database. And this is where we stopped in class. So when we come next time, we will continue from here, which is basically to write down the codes that we need to be able to insert the records of the customers' orders into the database table, which will be the customers table. So I'm recording this video to explain basically the code that we did last time to try to insert data into our database. So I decided to re-explain it because there were some of you who weren't able to get what we were doing or wasn't able to successfully send data into their database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically explain the code, but again, I'm going to talk about some changes that you need to make inside of your code as well that I didn't do with you guys last time. And I'm not going to be around today, which is when I'm recording the video. So the first thing you need to do, remember, is you need to import SQLite 3. Remember, that's the database server. Then you need to create a variable, which we called it connection. If you guys remember, this is con, but here we actually called it connection. You can call it connection con, whichever one. And you have to create this variable con so that you can connect this program, which is this front end, to your back end database using this database server called SQLite 3. And of course, the keyword connects, and inside you put the name of your database that you created. Remember, I said that you need to have a database where you need to have a folder where you have the database you created with the program that you are basically coding in the same location. So once all of that is set, the last thing we did was we came to the section. I explained that in my program, everybody's program structure is different. But in my program, once the user actually first selects the ring that they want, so first they select if they're a customer or admin. And if they say they're a customer, they enter the ID of the ring they want. And basically the first ID is for the rainbow glow, the second is for the fiery sparkle. So if that particular ID is found inside of my ring info list, and remember guys that I said I have a ring info list where I store the details of the ring. So if that ID is found in the ring info list, then it means that they're successful enough to place an order. And so what will happen is it will print all the details for that ring, including the ring name, the ring cut, the ring carat, and of course the quantity that they want, which will later be asked. So once that is all printed for the user to see, so this variable here is just to basically get that index position of, for example, the first one says this variable find ring details, and it uses the ring info list, which is this list here, and the dot index method to basically find the ring ID that the user has chosen. So it goes to the customer choice. So if the user ID chooses AS1200 or AS1300, it goes back to the list and it finds that particular ID, and then it finds the index of that ID. And this obviously starting at a 0 index position, and this is a 1, this is a 2, this is a 3, and so on. So it finds that index position, which in this case, if the user chose the first ring, it will be returning a 0 index. And then +1, it will find the next thing, which is the ring name. Then another +1 from the ring name, it will find the ring cut, and another +1 will find the ring carat. And so all that information will be returned to the customer to see first, and then decide if they want to confirm their order or if they want to make a different choice. If they decide to confirm their order by choosing option A, then I had the variable called choice in my case, which I think most of you have used a random choice. And I basically allowed the computer or compiler to go back to this list of select ID so that it can make a choice and of course choose which is the right, choose any one from this list here. But in my case, like I explained in the class, I combined the choice that the compiler is going to make choosing either one of these options with a prefix string. So what that means is I had this variable that was generating the choice, and I said, okay, thank you for confirming you want to buy the ring. Then I asked them, how many of this ring would you like to buy? And now I have an if statement saying if their choice initially was the first ring, which is ring info 0, so that means the first ring ID, this is at a 0, this is at a 4, because you count 0, 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. So this is at a 4. So the IDs are at a 0 for me and at a 4 for me. So if they chose, I go back to the if statement saying, if they have chosen the first ring ID, so I created another variable called V. Of course, you should have reasonable variable name. So this is just an example. It's called V, and I have a prefix string, and this represents rainbow glow diamond ring. It's actually supposed to be DR. I just wrote RGBR. And then this is going to be combined with the choice variable. And remember that this is the choice that the compiler is going to randomly choose from this list. So this is how I decided to create my order ID. So this basically here is generating the order ID. So all of you guys have to see how you generated your order ID. Remember, no matter how long your order ID can be, there will be a time where the computer will generate an order ID that will be duplicated, because this is a shop. This is where people come and order rings. So you have an infinite number of customers. And so there will be a time, even if you have a very, very long list of order choice, where the computer will randomly generate these orders, pick from any of these choices you have, but there will be a time that it will get duplicates. And so that is where you have to use a while loop to avoid that duplication, because you cannot send duplicate order ID to your database, okay? So this is the way I decided to generate my order ID. And then this X variable is just returning the ring name. So this is why I have the ring info list, of course, and that is this list that I have here. And inside of the square brackets, I have find ring name, which is basically the variable that's going to be having the index position of the ring name. Then the variable Y is also saving the ring cut. The variable Z is saving the carat. And of course, Q is basically returning, saving the quantity. But the reason I made a string casting is because my quantity is an integer. The reason I made it that way was at the end of the day, I wanted to find how many people bought certain type of rings, since there are just 2 of them. So this is why I requested quantity to be an integer. But when I am sending it to database, I have saved it as a text. So therefore, you don't have to save it as a text there, by the way. If you want the quantity to still be number, you just go to customer IDs, and quantity, you can save it as a number. So right here, I have this as a text. but it is not necessary. You can, I mean, I have it as an integer, but if you want, you can make it, yeah, I think you should just leave it as an integer, really. It doesn't make sense to make it as a text. So anyways, I have quantity as an integer here. So I'm going back to my code, and here I have my quantity casted to a string. I don't really have to have it this way. I could just save it as quantity, so QTY, and that will be fine. So that must have been some slight error that I wrote. So if you casted yours to a string, just avoid casting it to a string. Since it is saving in your database, you already have it saved as an integer, which means as a number. So it is okay to just pretty much leave it as an integer, and you don't need to make it into a string. The other ones are the string ones. Okay, so going back to the code, there are some slight things that I would like us to fix in this code. According to what I have here is I have the fact where once we have done this and we've generated the order ID and everything else in terms of ring name, ring cut, we're not really sending these three things to the database. We don't need to send the ring name, the ring cut, and the ring caret because we already have a database table, if you guys remember, called products. And in this database table, it already contains the two type of ring that the store is selling. So we don't need to send again when the user places an order. We don't need to repeat sending the ring name, the ring cut, and the caret because this table, we already have related it to this table. So there is a relationship if you guys remember. Oops, I wanted to show you that. So let me go back here. And if you guys remember, we made this the foreign key. So the ring ID in the customer orders table is called the foreign key, if you guys recall. And that is the key that is connecting to the products table, which has, again, the ring ID. So if you go back to products table, remember that in this table, we have a ring ID, but this is known as the primary key. So this is relating the two tables together. So this avoids us to repeat having ring name, ring cut, and caret in this table. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is, all right, so this is what we had in our code. So this is where we stopped. And then we came last time, we basically, since I told you before that I wanted to avoid the situation whereby the computer or the compiler will generate a duplicate order ID and will send it to the database, I wanted to avoid getting an error, which you will eventually. We created a file, and this file, I called it customer orders, but here it's called testing. So for you guys, you would have it as customer order file. That's okay. It doesn't matter the name, but we created a file and we used the read command to read what was in the file so we can check if this order ID that is generated already exists in the file. And so this variable called read file is going to basically read each line of the file. And this will help us to use the while loop to check if this variable v, remember that v represents the order ID, already exists in this read file variable, which basically has the command of reading the file that you are opening here. So this will just help to check that if such an order ID that is generated already exists in the file, then it will say that that sort of order ID is already found. So you can just say the message will be here. In this case, you would say order ID, and basically the v will return what the order ID is found in the file. Okay, so just this is a message you would do. I think I'll just leave it in capitals for now. So the order ID is found in file. So this will mean that if it generates an order ID that already exists, it will just say that the order ID is found in the file. And this while loop will keep on repeating, checking the file over and over again until it doesn't find the order ID. So here we can change the message to order ID is not found in the file. Okay. Okay, so this again, I'll repeat what I said. Remember that I said we are generating an order ID according to what I have because I have a prefix string with, of course, the choice that the compiler is going to be randomly picking from here. And what's going on is that when we get to open this file with the read command, read means R command, not an A command like an append. This variable will also read every line of the file. So this one just opens the file and gives the read command to read it. But this variable reads each line of the file. And the while loop is helping us to go through every line of the file to check if this v variable, which is going to be this order ID generated, exists in the file. So if it exists, it will say that it is found in the file, and then it will create, and then it will basically repeat itself to again generate or randomly choose something else from this list to combine with the prefix string. So this is why I have these codes that are similar to the codes here repeating themselves all over again, because it has to regenerate again if it finds that particular order ID exists in the file. If it doesn't find it existing in the file, so you guys will notice this has to be again inside of this line. So I think I have to shift it. Just make sure, because this will follow while, because it's following on the while loop. So everything else, please make sure you indent. I think I forgot to do this. All right, so just check if you're well indented. Okay, it's really essential. So this means, all right, there it is. Okay, so this means if it doesn't find this variable existing in the file, that is the order ID, then it just will say it's not found. And then I created another variable called D, which is basically just going to go and return the name of the ring. So it's just going to return the name of the ring, which is Rainbow Glow in this case. Because remember, it was find ring details, and that was basically returning the ID of the ring. So it will return that. Because, sorry, not the name, guys, it will return the ID of my ring, because this variable was basically going to go back to this list again, and it was going to get the index position of this particular ID for each of these rings that are sold. So here the D variable is going to just get the ID of the ring, since we have to send, remember, to the customer orders database when the customer place orders, we have to send the order ID, the quantity, and the ring ID of what ring they bought. So that is why I created a D variable to return the ring ID that they had bought. And of course, we're going to use the quantity Q variable, and then we're going to use the V variable for me, because that will return, get the order ID. Okay, so this is what we have up until this stage. Now, the slight changes I would like to do, because if you guys realize my file part, the part where I actually have the file that basically creates a file, and in this case, I have to change it. Mine is called, I'm just going to call this a new file. So I'm going to do testing2, because I have this stored differently. It's outside. So I'm going to create a new file. So I'm going to call this testing2, testing2. So the problem is I'm trying to read from this file, but I haven't yet added anything into the file, and I haven't yet given the command of A to actually have things inside of the file to read from. I'm reading before actually adding. So these statements here have to actually move away from here. They have to go to the beginning first. So we have to go all the way back from when, if the ring was equal to the first option, then, we generate this particular order ID. But what about if it was equal to the second option, which is this case where we now have this part here, where we have to now remove as well. Instead of having it this way, we should have this elif customer choice is equal to ring 4, which in my case is the fiery sparkle, should move to the top here. So if it was equal to the first option, which means the rainbow glow, then it will generate this particular ID. If it was equal to the fourth option, which I'm going by my list, fourth option is this ring, fiery sparkle, then it will generate the other order ID, which is supposed to be FSRD, which is basically supposed to be the fiery sparkle prefix string. I don't find it here, but it's supposed to be this plus the choice. So that's what we are going to make changes to. And the file adding, as in the file, adding stuff into the database, should actually be at the top, because first it will have to check the file. It should not be at the top exactly, but it will have to first, once it generates. Let me just go back and re-explain this gently. So what I'm going to do, just to make things easier, is first I'm going to come back here. So these are the changes you're going to have to make. Once I finished explaining everything, I talked about you guys saying if it wasn't found, it's just going to generate the quantity, and it's going to insert the Q variable into the database, etc., etc. So the reason I casting this as a string here is because we are making the commands that we're entering into the database is of a string type. Again, you could try doing that without casting it as a string, because you're inserting values. Just let us leave it as a quantity QTY, okay, for now. And if we get any errors, you can still cast it back to a string, because most likely you might get that error because of this insert command. Anyways, so this is the last thing we did together. So we did the while loop and generated an order ID, again, if it exists into the file. If it did not exist, we just basically got the ring ID and the quantity, and we already have this variable V. So we need to insert the order ID, the quantity, and this particular, what do you call this again? this particular ring ID. And that was the command we used for this database. So we used the connection con, which we had declared at the beginning. Again, you don't have to do it this way. You can actually just have it here if you want, and you can just make it a global con. So this can also work, and you don't need to repeat writing con here. So that means you don't need to repeat putting the connection again, since you already have the connection at the top. It's like you're already declaring it. And then here is where you have this command of SQL language, because you're saying con execute, and you're trying to execute the query where we call it a query, a command, basically, where you insert into the customer orders database table. And so this is the name of the database table you have. And you're inserting these values, the order ID, the quantity, the ring ID. You notice that these values have to be the same way you have written them in the database, these data fields. So you have to make sure you write them in the same way, because that's where you're inserting these things too. And then the command values are question mark, because you don't know what these values are yet until the user books and places their order. But these values will contain these data sets, because we already have the variable v, which is going to be the order ID. And of course, that's a variable v that we have here. We have it at the top as well. The variable q, which is going to be the quantity, and that's the variable that we have here as well. And the variable d, that's going to be the ring ID. Okay, so d is the ring ID, which basically is this variable that we had done here. All right, so yeah, so that's pretty much what we did. And con commit means to run the query, and con close means to close the connection with the database once it finishes. Okay, now the slight changes I would like us to do is back here. So first, when we go back to the top, remember it says how many of the string, because if we run this, you will get an error where it will tell you that it cannot find the file called testing, because you are trying to read from a file before you actually added things to the file to read from, to check. You don't have anything in the file yet. You haven't created the file yet, but you're trying to read from it. So this is why you generate an error. So first, what we're going to do to save us from having such an error is we'll go back to this part right here. And remember, we said if it was equal to this customer ID was equal to 0, that is the first string choice. This is where we generate this order ID for the rainbow glow. Now we're going to come down here, and we're going to, for me, I'm just going to go and copy paste. So I'm going to go back. I will also have to move this particular variable here. You can leave it here if you want, but I'm just going to move it. The one that where my compiler actually randomly chooses, I'll just put it down here. Again, like I said, you can leave it in the position where it is. And I will go back and I will copy this section here where I have elif, right? I will use the elif customer choice. This is the opposite statement. So I'm just going to go and copy paste it in here to make it faster. So elif customer choice. So if the customer choice is the first ring, then I want you to generate a random choice from the list select ID and then uniquely create this order ID. But if it is the fourth index position, which in this case is my second ring, fiery sparkle, then it will do the same thing as well. So I'm going to go back down, back here, sorry. So this is where I am. So then it's supposed to do the same thing, only this time we're not going to have these RGBR. Since it's fiery sparkle, we will have a different prefix string. So here I'm just going to go back and I will recreate this. You notice I'm using the same variable because it depends on what the user chooses as the ring choice. So instead of RGBR, I'm going to do it as fiery sparkle FS and then diamond ring FSDR. So this is one of the things that I wanted you to change. And then after that, I'm going to also move. For now, I'm going to cut these things out because I don't necessarily need them. Or I'm just going to cut all of the statement, everything that goes from the ring name to the quantity to all the way where it says that your order is going to be placed. I'll just leave them there if you don't want to cut them, or just take them slightly down. Now I'm going to move certain things back up. This file where we opened and read the file, I'm going to move it to the very top. So I'm going to take everything all the way till right here. I'm going to cut all this statement. So you need to cut all of this part of your code because I want to move it to the top once it actually once it actually determines what kind of ring the user chooses. Right here is where I want to paste it. So just make sure you do the right indentation. Okay, be careful because you're moving things. Right here is when I want to open the file and I want to actually read. I want to give a command where the file is actually open. So instead of the reading to it, I will just say as an append. And it will append, of course, the order IDs that don't exist. So that's what I want to do. I want my file to not also contain duplicates of order IDs. That's what I want to do. So this is where I'm going to go back and I'm going to make some slight changes. And yeah, and then I will put in my, if I'm going to modify slight things from here as well. So for now, this is the statement I wanted you guys to copy paste. So just make sure you copy paste the statements that was previously down below and move them to the top here. Now we're going to open and read files. So copy the statement where you have read, you're reading from the file, but remember, you have to first open the file with an A command, because you're going to say this file should be open and ready to append any order ID that doesn't exist in the file. So you also will be doing two things. The two things are, you will make sure you don't have duplicate order IDs in your database, but you will also make sure you don't have duplicate order IDs in your file, because it will have to read and check the file every time before it will append. But you have to make that append command. Okay, so while we're here, so this is what we have. I'm going to change this to a variable of just file instead of file1, since file1 is doing the command of reading. And here I will like to make some slight changes as well. So it says, while this variable v is in the file, that means as long as this variable, which is this v order ID, exists in the file, what I want to do is I'm going to say, it will say that the order ID is found in the file, but it will also regenerate the right order ID. But this cannot work because I want to regenerate depending on if they choose the first ring or if they choose the second ring. So the slight change I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to kind of copy this statement, repeat this whole statement again, and I'll just paste it down here because it will regenerate depending on what kind of ID they chose. And this brings me back down to you not necessarily having this part, because you already have, you already have this if statement where you confirm it. I don't know if that makes sense, but you don't necessarily have to have this part at the top. So because you're already doing the confirmation, you're already saying if they confirm, then basically they choose the first or second ring. So you don't necessarily have to have the section here again where you're repeating if they choose the second ring, because you already have done it at the top. So I'm going to remove this for now. Okay, delete the part. Again, this is what I removed just to show you. I don't need to repeat having elif choice equal to the second ring, which in my case was in the fourth index position of the ring info, because I've already done it at the top. So this is why I'm removing everything that is the same here. Okay, or you can just delete it if you would prefer. Okay, so I'm going to remove that for now. So the next thing we're going to be doing after that, let's just make double check. So remember, I have my while loop, and of course this if statement, elif statement. Just be careful that it is indented properly, is inside of your while loop, because it will repeat finding or checking the order ID. As long as it's finding it, it will repeat generating a new order ID depending on what ring the user has chosen that they would like to place the order. And if it doesn't find it, which is where it says it doesn't find it, so this is where it actually would, generates, would just continue to send to the database. So I'm just going to have to move these things again back. So move them backwards. So here it will say your order is complete. Just take this all backwards. Once it doesn't find, of course, the order ID existing in the same existing in the file or in the database. So we're trying to avoid duplicates both in the file and also duplicates in the database. So this is like what we call you're trying to keep the constraint rule of having duplicate primary keys. Okay, so I'm taking this backwards, all right, just to make sure that they're in the right indentation, because this will happen only when the order ID does not exist in the file. So there's no duplication of that order ID because it has to be unique. I'm also going to take the statement back. We still have one more slight thing to do, which I'm going to show you in a few minutes. So I'm going to just take all of this back, and this one too, this one also, and this as well, and finally this one. Okay, so everything is now backwards. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do after we have done that is we're going to now fix the problem of the file writing. Okay, now I remember why I made this a string, why I made it an str, guys, because it's not because of the database. I actually made it an str because it was saving to file. Okay, if you guys remember when we store things to file, but I made it as an str here, so that's fine. When we store things to file, just remember that we always have to save them as strings. So now I'm going to remove this part of where I have everything that says open file, because I don't really need it since I already have it at the top there. So I already have done it right here, and I've done the decisions of the choices right here. So I don't necessarily need to have this part right here. So for the file part, I'm just going to remove all of this section where it writes to file. Perhaps maybe just keep slightly this part, because I need to write again the right order ID and stuff to the file. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back and, oh, here we need to remove it because we already have this stored as the variable V for me. Remember that V represents depending on what kind of ring they chose. So I can just write the V to the file instead of writing these unique different ones, since I had the if statements with them before. And I removed the if statements for if customer ID is equal to ring 0 or if customer ID is equal to ring 4. So I'm just going to take that out, okay? And then now I have this part here where I have the file right, and I have the ring name, and I have the ring, again, the variable for the ring name. I'm writing it to the file, the carets and the cuts and everything else, and the quantity, and I close file. Okay, so one slight thing that we will make sure we have. So this all comes down. We will remove this insertion into database. We will not insert it yet, since we have to first read from file and then write to file and then read from it and see if that order ID exists, and we check that there's no duplication in the file. Only then do we then send that information to the database. So you're going to have to remove that code of database, and you're going to have to come down and you're going to have to paste that code of database. So this is where you should paste the code. Okay, so to make sure it is after you have written to file, because you have to have something existing in the file that is not a duplicate of an order ID and etc. before you actually read from the file. All right, so these are the changes. Let's see if there's any other ones that we need to do just to verify. So far, no, but something I would like to do after we insert all of this information into the database, I would also like to go back, and I would like to go back and I would like to bring the message. Oh, the message that we have here, guys, do you remember this message that we have here where we say your order is complete, and we basically just display this information. I would like to bring all of that information back down. So and also you can remove all of this information from here, because you don't want to have duplicates. Okay, you want to avoid duplicates. Okay, so guys, as I was saying, I said avoid repeating, because you already have the set of data right here. So avoid repeating the set of data as well. Just delete it, because you don't need to repeat again X, Y, Z. You already have X, Y, Z. So this was because we move things around. So you can remove that. And what I wanted to say was take away all of this information. We will place it only after we have sent the information to database. So take away all of that info. And what you're going to do is you're going to go down here after you place the information to the database. And that's where I want you to post the info saying that your order is complete and data has been, and your data, we can do it this way. Your order is complete and data has been saved, or you can just, put a message saying data has been saved. But I think if you say one message, that will be enough. Okay, guys, so this is it. This is the code that we did last time, and these are the corrections that I wanted you to make from the code so that you make sure that data is saved in your database. So now we can try to run it, and we'll see how it works, okay? So we'll try to run it. Just make sure you double check the changes, make sure you wrote the indentation right, double check all of that, make sure you were able to open file, read from file, and etc. And you were able to do the file writes, and you were able to insert into database the correct things that you were doing. And that's pretty much it. And don't forget the messaging. And now we're going to run it and see if everything is fine. All right, guys. So as I was saying, we are going to run this program, make sure that it works. So the only thing that I would like you to make a slight changes is check that you remember that this is the last statement you wrote after the data has been sent to database. Make sure you don't keep it as RGDR, because you're not just sending, you don't know if the user is going to be choosing a Rainbow Glow or a Fiery Sparkle. Remember, you use the variable V, which is general for both of them, depending on whatever is chosen. So V represents the correct order ID. So just make a slight change here and, close this over here, and then comma, that will be a V, so that it returns whatever correct ring ID has been chosen. For the run of the program, like I said, we're going to now test to see if the program works and runs. One thing you should definitely do, please, is re-put in the connection to database, even though it's a global connection here, global con, and I did say you don't have to re-put it, but I realize if you run this program, you will get an error because your second, remember that it's going to be repeating, reconnecting to the database to insert data. So it will always give you an error saying your database is closed. So to avoid that, just add this connection again, please, from last time. Even though I said you have a global con, you don't necessarily, it will work if you didn't actually have to, rerun this multiple times. Okay, and the last thing, I removed time.sleep. So there shouldn't be any time.sleep here unless you want to run it in console. And that would mean that you want to run it perhaps, like, for example, when you want to run time.sleep, you want to run it in the console, in the actual thing where it will show the program being run, then this is where you can add time.sleep. Okay, so that's all. Now you can basically just save and run your work and see if your data is being saved to database. Remember to check and make sure that the codes are properly written. This is very sensitive code because you're sending stuff to the database, so you are using commands of SQL, okay, SQL language. All right, so I'm going to run this, and I'll run it in normal idle shell. So here is the A customer, and I'll put my D of the ring I want, and then it's going to ask display for me the details, and it will ask me to confirm. I will confirm these details. I want 3 of this ring. It says that the order ID is not found. So this means that you can see that it's verifying that this order ID is not found in the database using the while loops that we created. So because it's not found in the file, sorry. So because if you go to the files the first time, you're actually entering that information, which is sent. If you go to the database, then you will find the same information inside. So now let's try to run it again with another. So I have I have in my for loop to run it twice because I imagine I just did it for testing purposes. But of course you have more customers than 2. So this would run for the certain amount of customers that the shop can sell the rings to. So I'm going to run it the second time, and I'll run it multiple times until you see the message that says that the order ID is found in the file, and it regenerates a new order ID. Okay. All right, so it says wait for your information to be processed. So I'm going to run it with the Rainbow Glow and the Fiery Sparkle. I will say confirm how many of this ring you would like. I would say 4. It still gives me the message saying my order ID is not found because it doesn't find anything of that in the file. And it presents to me the order details, and it says have a good day. Your order will be processed, and 20 seconds after it will close to say bye. Now I'm going to run this again another time. Remember that once this is run, everything is saved in database and as well into your file. Okay, so everything is in the file and the database. So now I'm going to run it again because I want you to see the message that I was explaining on the section here, why we have the while loop, in case if the ring is found, it will always regenerate again. So let's run it one more time. Okay, so again, I'm a customer. I will enter same ID. I'm doing this for only a test run of Rainbow Glow, and I will do one for Fiery Sparkle. Okay, so confirm how many of this ring would I like. I would say 5. You see that this actually gives us what we're looking for. Here it says that the order is found, the order ID is found in the file because it actually existed in the file, so it doesn't make a duplicate, if you guys can see. So it found it in the file because you had it previously in your database, as you guys can see. But now when I refresh, you have the new order ID because that was newly regenerated, since that was not found in the file. So that's what I wanted to show you guys. Okay, so that's the part of the while loop. Now, if you want to run this in console, so let's just try to run this in console as well. It will open like this. This is where you can show the colors. I don't know if I explained this or not, but the colors are right here. So this is where you have, oh, not that. these two commands are the ones that allow you to display color because you're importing the operating system and you're clearing screen on the console. So now I'm going to continue with that. So enter the ring ID, and now it's going to rerun again. So details of your ring purchase are given below, and I will say a confirm. How many of this type of ring would you like? I would say 6. Okay, it gives me that same message again saying that this order ID RGB6 was found in the file, but RGBR2 was not found. So now it saves it as RGBR2, not 6. So you see that it does not allow me to have the duplicates that I was talking about. And the same thing happens in the testing section. Okay, let's do one run for Fiery Sparkle. So I'm going to do the next one as Fiery Sparkle. So Fiery Sparkle is FS, oh, it was AS1300. And it brings out the information for Fiery Sparkle. So this is Fiery Sparkle. I would like to confirm how many would you like? I would say 4. So it saves it for me in Fiery Sparkle, as you guys can see, and it ends my program. So when I go to the database, I will see Fiery Sparkle, which is the same thing I had here. So the order IDs, just to show you, do match right over here, and it saves it properly. And the quantity, which is 4. All right, guys, that's the end. I hope this was helpful for you guys.